Joining me in the podcast is well-known public figure, entrepreneur, and my good friend, Ollie Proudlock. Having lost 3 family members to heart-related conditions, Proudlock shares his ambitions in 2025 to tackle head-on something so personal to him. 10 years ago, he ran his first marathon with his father, supporting from the sideline. His father tragically passed away a few years ago, and so next year's marathon and his second in London will be to honour his legacy and continue his work to raise as much money and awareness for those affected by the condition, both in the present and in the future. His father may be gone, but his memory lives on with Proudlock and the things he continues to face head on and achieve. Family is the centre of all he does. He opens up about fatherhood and how he has an example to set for his beautiful little girl Bonnie, as well as being immensely supported by one of the strongest women in his life, his wife Emma. Proudlock has been in the public eye and seen and experienced it all. It's fascinating to hear what his biggest learning has been through the years of TV and building his business Serge Denim, and how these important lessons have shaped him to be the man he is today.
Guys, I'm incredibly proud to say that my first book, Fortune Favours the Brave, published by Penguin, is now in stores to purchase, or you can order your copy online. The book consists of 76 short lessons on finding strength in vulnerability. Adversity is something you will inevitably face in life. I wrote this book to share and showcase how to process that and what can come from it. Adversity is something we wish would never happen to us, but it does. I want you to understand, though, that it can inspire you to achieve incredible things, not just for yourself, but for others too. Everyone on this earth is born amazing at something. It is just a case of finding out what that is. Life is incredibly short and valuable, so make it count. You may find that you don't believe in your ability or fearful to test yourself. By the end of this book, I believe you will. To get yourself a copy now, it can be purchased at Waterstones, Amazon, or by simply clicking the link on my Instagram bio, Joshua Patterson _JP now.
I need more energy. Ready? Sun is shining. And then 2. Yeah, baby. Oh no, the yeah, baby was good. Right, now I want you to hit me back.
The original, when you used to do it from what I remember, was sun is shining.
There was a lot more.
A bit more croak.
Yeah, wait, let me go again. Ready? Sun is shining. It was a bit more like that.
Was.
I don't know why I went with the croak. I think it just felt like there was a bit more energy in it. So now give me your quick one back.
Yeah, baby.
More energy, a little bit
Yeah,
more.
baby.
Yeah, that's it. And then sun is shining.
Sun is shining.
Yeah, that is good.
That was a good one.
Do you know what? I know you've got a little bit of the thing with your chest at the moment, so I think that favours
Yeah.
the huskiness to that sun is shining.
We found a benefit to it. How are you, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm all right.
Yeah?
I'm okay. Yeah. Things are cool. I mean, you know what? There's a lot of people that are going to be listening right now, and they've seen your name connected to this episode, and they're probably going to be as alarmed as I was when you called me that first time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're thinking, why is Proudlock associating himself with a runner-related podcast? Is he bringing in a new apparel range? Most will be thinking.
It's a big question. Maybe.
We don't know.
Who knows?
Well, I do know. That's why you're on here.
You know why I'm here. You know why I'm running. Why am I running?
Basically, I got a phone call from Proudlock, and sometimes it's just a really nice catch up. To be honest, no single conversation really is ever the same, and that's what I've always loved about chatting to you on the phone. This one was a complete curveball, though, where it's this movement now where friends that you would least expect, like I know you're a super fit and active guy, but you know, running was never necessarily like a primary focus. So when you called me up and you're like, "Hey, man, I wanna do something," I was like, "Wow, this is kind of special." But also, what's so nice about it is that we've always had a friendship where you can just reconnect. It doesn't matter how long it's been, but just when you have opportunities like this, where a sport like that can bring you together and we can spend more time together, that's what makes me grateful.
Dude, 100%. And I think, you know, I used to run a lot, and I've done, I don't want to give it away, but I am doing the marathon next year. Obviously, we're going to talk about that. But I did a marathon 10 years ago, and the opportunity came up this time round to do it again. And in my mind, I was thinking it's been 10 years for the British Heart Foundation in memory of my dad. It was like the perfect loop.
This is what's really special about, I think, these sorts of experiences is that they tend to be inspired by something
Yeah.
rather than just necessarily following a trend. And I guess there's two different experiences there, right? Because when you look at running or you look at high rocks, there's such a movement in that right now, and you can get a sense for certain individuals that they throw themselves into it because that's what everybody else is doing. Not to say that experience is going to be any better or worse, but I think when you come into something like this and there's a substantial why behind that,
Yeah.
I just think from an emotional point, it's so much deeper rooted.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, anything in life that I do, whether it's personal, whether it's work, there has to be that real emotion, that reason why. Otherwise, I think to myself, why am I doing it? You know, I used to run a lot. It was very much about switching off, getting in touch with my mind, taking myself away from everything. And I think, you know, for me doing it again this time round and being a dad now as well brings that extra emotion to it. And for me, it just, you know, it felt like this is a good time to do it. And I want to take on a challenge. I haven't done a challenge in so long.
Well, the last one I can remember you doing was lockdown.
Yes, the cycle
Yeah,
with James.
it was.
God, I actually forgot about that.
What was that? What did that entail?
So we basically we both had our spin bikes at home and we cycled the distance from London to Newcastle. And we were doing it for Age UK. And I think during lockdown, everyone was trying to do something, raise awareness for something. James and I obviously have trained a lot together over the years, and we thought this is the perfect opportunity to raise money for a lot of these elderly people who are, you know, living by themselves. And I've never liked spinning. It was actually James's idea. And he said, why don't we spin the distance London to Newcastle?
James, by the way, for those of you that aren't aware, is the London fitness guy who obviously we got onto the podcast. Again, really good friends with Proudlock. You know, he was super open about his experiences in life and kind of how the industry's impacted him and kind of the direction he's gone down. And, you know, running equally is something that he now is heavily invested in, where it was so interesting how for him there was this moment when he crossed the finish line at London Marathon where he had the worst panic attack. You know, he thought he was having the heart attack. Obviously, he would have opened up to you about it.
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful thing how he's gone from that to now focusing on the 6 half marathons for next year.
I saw that.
And, you know, if you look at the journey he's on with that, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see, I guess, very different outcome for someone like yourself, but like how you're going to feel in that moment when you cross the finish line. You know, I think what's been really nice about this process with you, though, is almost like starting with a blank canvas, is actually you're an incredibly dedicated guy to whatever it is that you focus on, but actually you listen like as a friend. And I really value that because I think that's one of the challenges that you're faced with in this space is that people naturally just with external pressures always want to be a peer or appear doing something at a certain level. Whereas with you, I think it's the ability to just, I think, hold back a little bit. The fact that you're not even committed right now to necessarily prioritizing the time that you're running at, but more so going by feel, I think is going to be such an asset moving forwards.
I think that's the thing. And I think now, especially with social media, there's so much noise out there. We constantly compare ourselves to other people. And whether that's work, whether that's fitness, whether that's running. And I think for me, I try and quiet out the noise and I try to just listen to my body, enjoy the process. And I think for me, that's the most important thing, is enjoying the process and not getting too caught on the end goal. And that for me in life is about everything. It's about the process.
One of the values or the major values to this particular episode is there are so many people now that will be in a similar space to you. Every day somebody's probably quitting their job now and it's taking them down an unpredictable direction, right? Or they're pursuing a career in social media or their aspirations are on television. I think there's a lot that they could learn from you. I mean, you're a seasoned pro now. You've been in this game now for what, 14 years?
A long time, yeah, 14, 15 years. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Dude, it's insane. And I'm actually glad, you know, obviously it's changed a lot, as you know, over those 10, 15 years. And especially this world of social media has just got so big and it's so saturated. And as you say, a lot of people are leaving their jobs. A lot of these kids, when they're asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? They say they want to be an influencer. That wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago when we started doing it. And I think it's got a different feel to it now. And I'm very grateful that we've gone through it and we're a little bit older now so we can understand the process. Whereas imagine being in your early 20s and coming into that now and constantly comparing yourself to other people. And I think this is the problem, and I touched on it earlier, but it's the comparing. You know, I think before social media, we're all in our lane. We're doing whatever we do day to day, whatever it is with our job or with our family. We're unsure of what other people are doing, aside from people that we call and our friends that we see. Whereas now, every day when you go on social media and you're scrolling, you know, no matter what job or what holiday or whatever it is that you're doing, you're constantly seeing other people maybe achieving something more. And then people think to themselves, why am I not doing that? Or why am I not getting that job? So on and so forth. And I think then people don't feel satisfied and they don't just appreciate what they got, what they have and what they're doing. And I think then you start losing love of the process, because then you're so much thinking about the end goal and you're thinking about that job you're going to get, or even that time you're going to get in the marathon. You know, whatever time you get, the fact that you're doing a marathon is incredible, right? Whereas I think now people see so many people achieving these amazing times in a marathon or getting to these insane heights when it comes to fitness. But the key and the most important thing is just being satisfied with yourself and what you're achieving, because then you can enjoy the process.
I came into this space back in 2016. So like social media was knocking around, but it was nothing.
It was just starting.
It was in its infancy almost. Yeah. And I would say I was fortunate enough where I got to really appreciate the jobs that I had coming in. There wasn't, I feel like we were very individual. If you actually got a group of friends together in the same industry, not one single person I would say was actually similar to the next. Whereas now, I think it's really hard to identify actually who is separate from one another, because I think there's so many crossovers.
I think for me, the most important thing, because I guess there are people within social media who just focus in on one thing. So they'll just do fashion, they'll just do fitness. For me, it's never been about that. I think for me, what's been the most important thing is just sharing my life to a certain extent and the interest that I have within it. And as you know, for me, obviously fashion's at the forefront, but then also I'm very into interiors. So I do a lot of work within home, travel as well. Obviously now since becoming a dad, that opens up a different field. And I think for me, and especially for my wife as well, we just want it to be authentic and we want people to come on the journey with us. So whatever that is that we're doing in life, and we all have chapters within our lives and things change, that it's just real and authentic. And I think that's what's important.
I think the issue when you talk about authenticity is are people posting out of passion, or are they doing it out of pressure? Now, I actually had a really interesting conversation with my therapist where she was like, right now with your current mindset, you're posting because of anxiety, which is rejection, the lack of engagement, investment in your journey, because we keep talking about this momentary investment within people, right? But although I'm deeply passionate about my message, which is to get that, communicate, my struggles with my mental health, but equally to try and shine a light on it of like what positives can come from that. Equally, I find myself kind of suppressed in that situation. And I guess the pressures are of like the people that continuously are posting and maybe posting in a way that isn't necessarily genuine, like you were speaking about. And then we kind of find ourselves in like this negative like cycle. And so how do we break away from something like that? Because I for somebody like yourself, who I would say is a senior figure within this space, you've been doing this game for 14 years. How can you influence younger generations? Because I think there are so many people that can learn from your experiences in terms of how you've transitioned from, say, being in the industry, still remaining in it, but then how you find yourself sort of next phases.
It's a huge question, and it does worry me about the younger generation. And I think to myself, if I was a teenager now and I was at school and I had social media, I think I would really struggle. I think it would be super tough, especially in those early teenage years. As a guy and a girl, you're still trying to find who you really are. You're trying to find your confidence, trying to find what it is that you want to specialize in. And then to have this added pressure of social media, and again, going back to the comparisons of how you look, how people perceive you, all these various different things. And I think the most important thing is is trying as much as you can. I do this now anyway, and maybe this is just because I'm a bit older now. I'm a dad, I've got a couple businesses, but is to try to have a bit of distance from it. Because I think we all go in these stages where it's a bit of a love-hate thing with social media, I feel. Sometimes you can go through a rhythm with it and you're on a bit of a roll, you've got stuff to talk about, you're not spending too much time scrolling, which I think is the most important thing. But if you can have that bit of distance, and I try and do that now, I don't spend as much time on it as I used to. Important to go back a little bit to the old school and get like real life engagements and like just have conversations with people, have moments of putting your phone away. Like we try and have a rule in the house when we get home and, Bond's in the house, we just put the phone away out of reach. So you just don't know it's there. But I think as much, and whatever it is, whether it's running, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, could be going on a walk with your dog or whatever it is, you've got to have those moments just to reset. Because if you don't reset and you're constantly spinning and you're constantly going in that social media world, then I just think it's, dangerous.
How do you feel right now when you think of your dad?
Dude, I mean, that's a big question. I feel...
Does it still feel raw?
I mean, so it'll be 6 years this December that I lost my dad. And, he used to live in this area. So whenever I'm walking around, every day I think of my dad. But it's always something that like brings a smile on my face. I always see people who speak fondly about him. And I think since becoming a dad, I obviously think about him more, and I think about, God, it would be so nice if he met Bonnie. That would obviously be the greatest thing ever. But I'm so grateful that I had so many amazing memories with him, because I know there are a lot of people who haven't had that with their dads. So for me, I'm just grateful, and I just want to continue making him proud. That's the key.
Do you look at these experiences and think to yourself, rather than it's something you're unable to share with him, you're doing it because of him? He becomes the inspiration.
100%. And I know on that day when I'm running, and I know at the finish line when I'm going to see Emma and Bon, I'm just going to be thinking about him the whole way, because last time I did the marathon 10 years ago, it was my dad and Emma who were there at the finish line. So if I have moments of feeling a little bit sluggish or tired, that's just going to flip it. And I'm going to be thinking about him the whole way.
I think that's where a lot of people will really connect with you, bud. And I think that's the most important thing that I try and articulate to people, is that it's actually the message behind what you're doing is the most powerful thing. If you post a time that hundreds of thousands of people have posted before you, if that's the only comparison that really you want to be made, I think that's where the message is lost. I think understanding what you're trying to achieve here is what is going to give so many people hope, because there are going to be so many people today, tomorrow, the next day that will find themselves in a similar situation where they lose a loved one or someone that they deeply care for. And I think it's just how you can change that narrative around that. There are so many positives to come from the pain. And I think it's just such an amazing thing that you are starting this journey, not just because he's inspired you, but equally, you talk about Bon a lot. Like when I did London Marathon this year,
how did you feel?
Well, it was, for me, the one thing I really looked forward to the most was the fact that India was there with my mum. And it's so important to me that she is exposed to those experiences. Now, at 7 years of age, it might not necessarily mean a great deal to her, but when photos are taken and she sees an image of me holding her, 20 years from now, she'll look back at that. And it's those memories that I think you bring back. 100%. And I think they are the most special. And I think, ultimately, you and Ems are her role models, Bond's role models. Equally, I am to my daughter. And I think, when you compile all of these moments, hopefully that's where I want her to get her aspirations from. Not necessarily 100%. To share the same passions, but for whatever it is that she's doing. I think just showcasing to your child that you are proactive, I think is just the most important thing.
100%. I think it's about whatever it is in life that drives you and whatever challenges you want to take on in life. It's about going for it, and it's not about hesitating or being scared. For Bon, I just want her, like you say, like with India, they'll look back at these pictures and they'll have memories of this for sure. And it's basically just to, you get these opportunities in life, take them, because you only got one life. And it's about going out of your comfort zone. It's about taking on new experiences and enjoying it. But look at all the awareness you've brought, look at the money that you've raised, you've changed people's lives. Like, that is what matters. And that's what India will look back on. And she'll be very, very proud. And it's super important, you know?
Yeah. I mean, just when you were talking there, Bud, I think even just being sat here, you know, and you reflect on, you know, when we first met and our relationship, I think it fills your heart full of so much pride when you're able to see a friend transition in life the way that you have, for instance, and to see the continued successes. But, you know, there's a reason why I would say there's a hand select few that I've remained in contact with from the show. And I think it really comes down to work ethic, but also the characteristic traits of each individual. And it's a tough slog. I don't think a lot of people necessarily can really understand how tough this industry actually is to navigate. It's ever changing, and more so now than it was. Back then it was quick. Now it's like you blink
rapid.
and it's
rapid.
It's different. So to still be here right now and still have the ability to have people connect with you from around the world is so unbelievably special. And it's just, you know, I don't know why, but one of my fondest memories with you, I think we were in some like beaten up house. And I think it was probably one of the first times I'd met you, and you were sat on a fake toilet of some sort.
Sorry, what?
You were sat on a fake toilet. Do you remember? We were in robes or something.
Okay. Oh, and, so this was, we were filming.
Yeah, we were filming. And I just remember like going over to you, and you kind of like shook my hand. You broke character to kind of like shake my hand, and I kind of shook yours. And I remembered you obviously being the guy with the Christian cross earring.
Yeah.
And
that niche guy.
But it's just so funny how like a single moment like that, you look at it and you go, you know, this is probably momentary. You know, I might get to know this guy for the next couple months, but when you think 10 years later, that individual is still in your life and we're sat here now having this conversation. I just love how unpredictable this industry actually is, and how some people come and go in your life and some remain. And the fact we're sitting here sort of having this conversation, like it's surreal but lovely.
But dude, that's what it's about. And that's part of the thing that I think I've always loved about just life in general, no matter what it is. Like even before the show, you know, during the show, after the show, and hopefully for the years to come, is I love people. I love meeting new people. I love getting understanding of their journey and also going along that journey with them. Like I always say this when I work with brands, I always say I'm not in for like a quick win. I don't want this like one-off job. I like long partnerships. And it's the same for work and for life. Like when I meet people, if I really connect with someone, you know, I don't see that. Why is there not a reason for that just to continue? Like, what's the point in just having these small little moments? Like, yes, we obviously have some of those, but like when you connect with someone, I love that. And I think, why let that fade out? Do you know what's funny? So when I did that 19K the other day and I called you after, and I remember before doing it, you said, listen, bud, just take it easy.
Yeah. Enjoy
it. Don't go too hard. And for some reason, when you said that, it made me want to go really hard. I don't know why. It's like bizarre.
Did you?
So anyway, I obviously ran way too fast. And I remember I messaged you after because I didn't have a smartwatch. I just had my music on. And I remember I messaged you after and I said, dude, felt good. Hip was a little bit crunchy at the end. But all I did was just like, I reacted to my body, listened to the music and my surroundings. And then I realized 2 days later, I was actually listening to my mind and not my body, because my body was in bits for the week after. And obviously I was just listening to my mind. And it's amazing. You've obviously done loads of these challenges, but the power of the mind is just like, you know, my body probably 14, 15K in was like, wow, you need to probably slow it down. And I think that last 5K, I just pushed it even more because for some reason I was like, wow, and I was like, no, push it. So actually I was listening to my mind and I realized that after. So since then I've been reining it in a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, you tell me about, the amount of challenges that you've done.
I think this process, right, is really interesting because I think sometimes I'll tell you things and it'll be really interesting to see how you respond to that.
Yeah.
Anytime I try and mentor or support anyone that comes to me,
it's really interesting because as much as I can teach you what I've learned, you also need to learn for yourself. And if that means you listening to what I've said, going against that and making a mistake.
You knew I was going to do that, didn't you?
I didn't, but now you've said that, it's interesting for me because these are the things that I can take into account moving forwards. But like that's a really valuable learning for you.
No, I know.
I can tell you what to do, but ultimately you have to sustain an element of pain or frustration with your own action in order to prevent yourself from making that same mistake again. We're all very different. And also, although I've known you for a very long time, when it comes to something like running or any physical activity, it's understanding how to articulate yourself, what tone, how to communicate that message to the individual for them to respond to it in the appropriate way, whatever that might be. And so it's always, like I said, it's trial and error for myself. One of the first tests I think I put you through was when we were on the tread together next to one another. And this was kind of really early stages. And we were doing a tempo session.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was tough. And
yeah, it was funny as well, because I remember that, and I was nowhere near. You'd obviously been doing running for a while. You've been doing those tempo runs. I hadn't done any proper running, especially tempo running, probably in like 4 years. But I knew when I got on the tread with you, I was like, I am going to do this. Like when I commit to something, no matter how much it hurts, I will go ahead and do it. And I do remember after that, I was battered. But I remember during it, I was like, yeah, I'm good, bro. And I remember afterwards, I was like, yeah, I'm good, mate. And literally, I was battered that day.
You were playing it like, I remember.
And I remember those fast sprints. I was like, shit, man, this has got to be over soon. And you kept going, yeah, mate, 1 more minute. I was like, what is this? Because I didn't even have the timer on my tread. You obviously had it on your watch or something. So you knew. I had no idea when it was going to end. So I remember those little pacey runs, and I was like, wow, this is brutal.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was a good little shock.
That for me, that type of session, that wasn't an ego thing. That was more just to just suss you out, actually, to just see whether or not you were going to dig in. Physically, I never would have pushed you further than that. There was no point you trying to, or you sustaining an injury so early on. But at the same time, mentally, it was just really interesting for me to gauge where you were at and whether you would be able to, and you did. And I think that's the greatest asset, or one of the greatest assets you can have when you are running, because you're going to find yourself going through multiple points during a marathon, and I'm not going to be there. So it's a case of just priming you for those moments.
Yeah.
And also like muscle in my memory, when you put yourself through a session like that, and you find yourself in a tricky spot, it's an amazing thing to be able to reflect on those moments and be like, listen, I've been here before and I know I've got through it. It's really up to me now whether I want to get through this one too, which you will, because the why behind what you're doing is so substantial. But what I'm really interested to know with someone like yourself is what would you say, and this is a tough question because there would have been a lot, what has been your biggest learning through this journey?
You know, my mum is very creative. And then my dad was very entrepreneurial. And I like to think that I got a little bit of both. I got a little bit of each, a little bit of something from each of them. But what I learned from both of them, and they both had this skill set, is surrounding yourself with really good people. And I think that is the most important thing, because if you don't have, you know, and people say it all the time, but it's so true. If you don't have that good circle around you, especially in this industry, you're going to really struggle, because there's always going to be peaks and troughs. You're going to have these moments of doubt where you're not sure what you're doing or what the direction is. And you're also going to have these moments where it feels so clear and you're going to be, you know, on a bit of a roll. And I find that especially within a creative space. And I learned that young, you know, having trained to be an artist, especially in that environment, because I was always in the studio by myself. At least now with Serge and being in the fashion world, I'm surrounded by a lot more people. And that I think is really important, because if you're by yourself and you're going through these ups and downs, you're not bouncing off anyone else, you can get into a really deep, dark hole. And I found that when I was painting, and I always thought I wanted to be an artist. That was always my plan. And then when I went to Newcastle and I did fine art there for 4 years, and I remember during that time I was there, you know, I always loved the process, what I've been talking about this whole time. And I always loved the process of painting and how I used to react to different materials or layers. And it was all very emotion driven. But then when I went there, it became very conceptual. So they would constantly ask me, why did you do that? Okay, well, that's great, but why did you do that? And then I started questioning everything and started thinking to myself, why did I do that? why am I now doing this? And then I started stop enjoying the process. And that's when you can get too caught up on the why as opposed to going with the flow and reacting to your emotions and enjoying the process. But if you can do that and enjoy the process, but surround yourself with people who can build you up and like help you through those times when you're down, that is the most important thing. And that's the thing I've learned the most.
Like there's a handful of people that I trust eternally and have been there through me through.
And imagine if you didn't have those people, how much harder everything would be.
100%. And do you know what, actually, I've never really shared this before, something that, you know, deep down actually has hurt me, I'll be honest with you. One of the things that I've always wanted to do with the platform I have is bring as many people in on the journey as I possibly can. If I came across someone who was a talented musician, artist, fashion, acting, whatever it is, like we're so lucky that we get to meet people every single day. And so for me, it was trying to utilize this platform to connect this person to this. And if that enables them to perform on television or be on the radio or, you know, a concert or whatever it might, or be sponsored by a brand, that for me is one of the things that I would look back on in my career and go, that's what I was really grateful for. That was quite cool, because I think that's something that maybe I've lacked in my life. Is there's maybe been times where I really wish somebody came to me and was like, what do you need help with? And so what I maybe lack is something that I try and give. And I think one of the things that's maybe reduced my circle is actually when those individuals who I would like to think I've really helped along the way, we've had like sentimental moments where, you know, there was one individual in particular, wasn't really particularly known. And, you know, we used to have a relationship where they'd call me up because I did quite a lot for them initially. And we used to have a relationship where they'd call me up and go, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe this is happening. And it would always be a case of like, this is where you're destined to be. Just keep grafting. And the aspiration was always one day they would go to the O2 because they'd have concerts, and I would always pay for tickets for myself and my friends because they were up and come, you know, they were working hard. And it was always a case of one day when you perform at the O2, why don't you then, you know, that's when you can give me, you know, a box we joke about, and I could bring my family and friends down. You know, that's the big moment. And sadly, they actually did recently perform at the O2 and I never got the phone call, you know, and they actually weirdly made a remark which kind of stuck with me, where he made a remark about how he'd become more famous than me. And it was almost like a stepping stone where I started to realize, unfortunately,
publicly made that.
No, actually just on the phone one day, and I didn't think much of it. And I think that's kind of been the case now, I think, with a number of people, is that they seem to be incredibly close to you and really value that relationship, I guess, whilst you've had that platform. But then when that starts to change, or maybe, you know, their career starts to go in a slightly different direction, you start to realize that a lot of those relationships, although I thought they were very authentic, turn out to be not so much. And you've probably been the same in your, you know, in your life too.
You know, when things like that happen, you know, obviously it doesn't feel that great, because like you say, you feel like you've been there since the start and maybe you've helped them get there. But, you know, you've just got to let it go, and you've just got to remember the important thing, and is the fact that you did your part, and you can feel good about that. At the end of the day, are they going to feel good about cutting you out, or, you know, not giving you that little ticket at the box or whatever? Yeah, probably. Or maybe they won't. And if they don't, then, you know, good luck, carry on. Like,
I think the good thing that I take from it though is it makes me really appreciate the others
100%,
so much more.
But dude, and you speak about it, you know, the older we get, the tighter the circle gets, and I think the wiser that we get, and we start seeing the red flags earlier.
What would you say your biggest regret has been? And if you could go back in time and be more proactive about a decision in particular, is there anything that stands out?
Look, I think we've all got regrets, and some people hold on to those regrets, and I think I do anyway. I kind of let them go, and I'm a strong believer in that things happen for a reason. But I also, you know, one of my mottos, especially during the last like 10, 15 years, and probably more so since doing the show, is you regret the things in life you don't do more than the things you do. So I try to take on things, and if it doesn't work out, it's fine. Rather than going through life and not doing something and looking back and going, oh, what if? Do you know what I mean? I think it's important sometimes to take a little bit of risk. Funny enough, doing the show for me was a massive, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but it was a huge risk for me. And I was so uncertain about it. And I remember in the end, I was thinking to myself, do you know what? Just do it. And if it doesn't work out, it's fine, and move on. And I was thinking to myself, if I don't do it and if I don't give it a try, I'll probably look back on this and think to myself, oh, what if? And that I remember that was such a big decision for me. And I think ever since then, whenever things have come up or opportunities and I've been a little uncertain, I like to think that I've actually, to a certain level, I've gone ahead and done it, just because I don't want to have too many regrets. I prefer to try things, and if it doesn't work out, then, you know, it's fine. It's just, that's how it is.
I mean, I was kind of lucky. For me, there was no risk in the decision I made. If anything, I felt grateful to be given an opportunity to take me away from a place that I was so unhappy with, you know, mentally, physically, career, like environment. It just wasn't.
Was it real estate?
Listen,
Come on, buddy.
listen.
Come on, selling pads.
Listen, if you want to talk about bricks and mortar,
I hear that a few companies need a guy to come down and give some sort of inspirational chats about property and investments. Maybe bring that back. Maybe that's the passion that you need to reheat. You know what I mean?
Listen, I don't like to often brag about it, but some say I'm the Elon Musk of bricks and mortar.
Oh, the bricks and mortar.
This week's episode is sponsored by Runner. Runner is a personalized running coaching app helping runners of all abilities train for any goal. From a first 5K to a marathon, even an ultra marathon. When the time is right for you, your plan can be created within a minute and ready to go. With each plan, Runner provides all the help a runner requires, including strength and conditioning, and you can also reach out to the team at any time via the support tab inside the app. For a 2-week free trial on any personalized running plan, use the code PHOENIX. No matter your goal, Runner is there to help you achieve it.
So for you, that's interesting, because I don't actually really know. You know, you told me little bits, but for you making that decision, that wasn't a big decision for you.
I didn't want to do it. I did it because at the time, so, you know, pre-show, I was building and developing properties, and I was working in sync with my dad. My dad had given me, you know, I found myself in a really dark place at that point. And so like my dad came in and was like, listen, we're going to start you from the ground. You are literally just going to be a laborer. And then if I feel like you're competent, we'll start to go from there. And I had to earn my stripes in order to earn the respect of the builders on the site, because like any normal relationship, daddy's son comes along, is entitled, starts trying to be the big I am. It was humbling, and it was actually one of the best decisions I made. And I think just being outside and actually, again, like learning from these guys who had faced so many hardships, but were just tough men. It was just, I found it really insightful. And at that time, like I said, was just a serious blessing. But, you know, it got to a point where deep down, I just didn't like the fact that my life was mapped out. I was going to be in Norfolk. It was a case of buying a house. I'd probably get a girlfriend or a dog, and we'd have children. For some, that's the dream. But for me, the one thing I'm most grateful for about my career right now is the unpredictability. I don't know how much I'm going to make every year. I don't know who I'm going to work with, where I'm going to travel to. And that, I don't know why, but that for me is exciting, because it gives me the incentive to keep waking up every day knowing that actually the outcome really can be determined by the graft that I put in. Whereas originally it was kind of mapped out. That being said, when the opportunity for the show came along, I remember like laughing to my friends, being like, this is a joke, right? And I snubbed it. And then my dad went mental and was just like, who the fuck do you think you are? Why have you turned that down? This could change your life.
Really?
He was living. Well, because my dad comes from poverty in Northern Ireland. Yeah. Nothing. And here his son's been given an opportunity to potentially move to London and be exposed to a completely new reality. And if you are deeply passionate about something, could thrive in it. Why have you snubbed this? And I think he knew deep down like what my qualities were. And I think for him, probably he was thinking, it wasn't a case of I was being wasted where I was, but there was far more to me, I guess, than what I probably was doing.
I mean, that must be massive for you when you think it was your dad who obviously, you know, took you under his wing, started you from the bottom up, And you were probably thinking, oh, I can't leave my dad. You know, my dad's got me involved in the business. If I suddenly go to dad, see you later, I'm off, I'm going to go be on this show. That's how I would have played it. I'd be like, God, I can't. But the fact that your dad was like, no, you go and do this. Like, don't waste this opportunity. I think that's epic.
It was huge. And I just remember him.
Because him saying that, then you must have been like, you're right.
Well, he was like, listen, you got a choice. Like, you can go and potentially have an exciting new job, or I sack you and it's a lose-lose because you have nothing to do. So you're going to have to go there. Otherwise, you're going to be sat here twiddling your thumbs. And I was like, that's a bit harsh, all right? So I remember going, and it was only when I kind of sat down and I kind of looked at the other individuals that they were interviewing at the time, and I was kind of listening to what was coming out their mouth. And I was like, I think there's something here. Like, I do feel like there's some value to be added to this that isn't necessarily on it. But I think the risk factor for me was I just, in my head, was probably a bit naive that when you were hired to be on the show, that was it. You were set for God knows how many seasons, and yet you and I both know people can be cut after a week. And so I had
especially coming on later down the line. Like, for you guys, coming on later was a lot more risk.
But I did. But then, you know what I mean? Naivety is bliss.
Naivety is bliss. The fact that you didn't know that is so much better, because I think a lot of people who came on and were aware of that and then were trying to sort of manipulate storylines and be something and so on and so forth, they didn't last. So I think that you coming in with that viewpoint was the perfect scenario.
I think the massive asset I had, and I think for anyone that's listening, because I don't think it will ever change, the reason why I did well was authenticity.
Yeah, dude. But that's what it all comes back to.
I remember even in the interview process, you know, they were asking me questions and kind of expecting these answers that they've heard 100 times over. And I was so genuine. You know, they were kind of like, listen, you know, I'm sure you're a heartthrob, right? You must get the ladies. And I was like, what? Are you joking?
You were like, I'm laying bricks.
I was like, listen, yeah. It's just
no. It's just me and the lads.
Me and Stevie here just making concrete every day. I was like, you got the wrong guy. I can't actually repeat what I said word for word, but it made them laugh. Basically, It wasn't the response that they were getting. And I just remember then when I saw people getting cut left, right, and centre, I was thinking, wow, now this is kind of scary, because I've just moved here. I've just started renting a room thinking that this potentially could be my life. And yet, you know, with a click of a finger, it's all over. But the difference, I think, when going into that, this is one of my regrets, is that with rugby, I think I allowed myself to be affected so much by external influences, and that's what I think triggered me and then affected my performances, and then the outcome wasn't what I desired, which was to play professional rugby at the highest level. And I think had I managed to get a clearer mindset, I think I would have had that opportunity. So when I came into the show, it was a case of completely different mindset, and also seeing this as a second chance to really fulfill something. And it was just a clear-cut vision, and I was not going to be distracted by anyone or anything. And, you know, I feel so grateful for the opportunity, because although I definitely was faced with some hardships, or lots of hardships, I look back now and I just think, look at the position I'm in. Like, over 10 years or almost 10 years now, I'm still in this industry, and that in itself is something to be really proud of. And I think that's why it's really nice to have, like you said, an environment or friendship group where I have individuals like yourself that maybe really can understand that, and we can look back and be so grateful and laugh at some of the highs, and I can definitely lean on you when I probably reflect on some of the lows. Maybe there was more so. But I think it is special. You know, it was a mad time. And it's interesting because when you talk to a different individual, someone like yourself, you know, it was a magical moment when we had Spencer coming on. Like, he really does resent the affiliation with it, but then his approach to it was very different to yours. But what I tried to express to Spencer in this situation is that we can't change the past. What's done is done. And actually, rather than looking at the negatives, look at the positives, which is ultimately it's given you a platform and the ability to now connect the things that you are deeply passionate about. When you look at the success he's now having in this challenge space with his last one, raising 600,000 for charity, but also the media being invested in him, it's the fact that he's changing that narrative or the perception of who he was, and, you know, who he is now is a magical thing. So like you said, don't be too hung up on the past, because tomorrow can be so different.
You can't change the past. So no matter how much there may be certain bits from the past that you regret or things that you potentially want to change, you can't change those. Like, that's done. There's nothing you can do, but what you can do is change the future. And you can use those things from the past as fuel, and you can change the narrative over time. And I think that's something that Spenny's doing really well. I think he's changing the narrative. He's taking on these incredible challenges. And rather than trying to change the past, I think he's using that as fuel to really drive him forward. And like, I think if we can all do that to a certain extent, then anything is possible, you know? I think we've really got to try not to focus too much on things gone by that we wish may have not happened, or things that we can change, because we can't. So if we can just kind of like use that as fuel and just look to where we are now, and look to the future, and look to the people around us, and just enjoying the process of life, then that is the most important thing. And I really believe that.
If you take Bon and Ems out of the equation,
Yeah.
with reflection, what is the one thing that you are proudest of?
Okay, so obviously Serge, I'm really, really proud of.
I was going to say,
You know,
I would have said Serge for you.
That's the first business I ever built, and 13 years this June is still going stronger than ever. And wow, that's been an insane journey. And, you know, when I started that business, you know, I was just this guy living on my sister's sofa. I bought 500 t-shirts. I stored them at my buddy's house. He gave me £5,000. Got shares in the company. And I was pick and packing these bad boys at his mum's place, going to the post office, you know, just day by day, unsure of where it was going to go. And all those early memories, I remember every single one. And to see the process and the progress and the people that have come and gone, and to see where we are now, 13 years later, you know, Bon is obviously my baby girl, but I really truly see Serge as like one of my first babies in its teenage years now. And I think for me, the amount I've learned during those 13 years from Serge is part of the reason who I am now. From like a personal perspective, I think aside from my family, I think just staying true to myself, dude, I think has been the thing that I stand by. Through all the last 15, 20 years, just constantly staying true to myself. I think that's something that I'm super proud of.
It's a difficult thing, isn't it, to do?
It's hard, man. You know, especially when there's a lot of things coming into our lives, and, you know, getting affected by certain things, and, you know, especially in those early years, a lot of things that could kind of mold you and change you into a different person. It's tough to stay true to yourself, I think.
Do you look to individuals, or a particular individual, I guess, not necessarily for validation, but when you reflect on those things, is there someone that you turn to, that they become the motivation for that? Would you say that is purely just...
Yeah.
Would you say that purely is just family focused?
I think my wife, Emma, dude, for everything. Like, I really, really respect her opinion. And like anything, whether it's Serge or personal jobs, I pretty much run everything by her.
She's a strong, strong woman.
Dude, she's like honestly unbelievable. And she inspires me daily. I mean, she's so driven, like everything that she does. And she does everything from authenticity and from love. Like, she is just the most incredible human being. And I've learned so much from her. And I've become a better person since being with her. So yeah, pretty much everything in life. Even doing the marathon, I didn't say yes until I'd, you know, run it by her. Like, it was important for me, firstly, that she was happy for me to do it, but also just to get her, like, you know, her insight on it as well, to take on a challenge like that. So yeah, Emma, 100%.
It's a powerful thing, isn't it?
Oh my God, bro. Do you know what's incredible? And I think as guys, we have this guard up, especially during our teenage years, early 20s, where we don't want to show emotion. You know, we want to be like the hard guy. We keep this wall up. We don't want to show any tears or talk about our emotions or whatever it might be. And there have been 2 stages in my life where my guard has gone down. And I think when I met Emma, that was a massive point where my guard came down and I started being much more open with my emotions. And then when I had my daughter, and I'm sure that's the same with you, and suddenly that guard just fully fell down, and now I am so emotional all the time. And I feel good about it, and I feel open about sharing my emotions, which I think is so important. Because otherwise, if you hold them up, hold them down. They just build and build and build. And I feel, yeah, those two have just completely changed the way I look at life in general, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like think of the emotions since having India.
Well, I mean, I'll give you an experience, not an experience, I'll give you an example. You know, last night she misbehaved. And, you know, I was really, I was cross with her because, you know, she's just coming of that age right now where, you know, although she's 7 years old, in her head, she's this fully grown woman. And, you know, like any other child, sometimes they just, they push their luck.
Well, they're testing the boundaries, yeah.
And I made it clear to her that I was, you know,
Upset.
I was upset with her.
How do you do it? Can you give me an example?
It's the face.
She just knows when you pull the face.
It's the face, and
do you
I think
go?
the tone.
Do you go quite? Oh, do you go quite quiet, or do you raise the level?
You have to be careful raising the
you
level
don't
because
raise.
I don't ever want my daughter to be raised in an environment of fear. It's more just like she knows. It's just
subtle.
it's the expression, the tone of voice, and I went to do something. I don't know. Just I was pottering about, and she comes to me and she goes, "This is for you." And she pointed at it. I could see it clear as day. She just put it like to my feet and she went, "That's for you." And she walked away and opened it up and she drew a picture of me and her and underneath it just saying, "I love you." Oh. Even just telling you that now, like that made me a bit emotional because wow, just that was so beautiful. And I just went up to her and I just gave her the biggest,
dude, I see you go, man. But
yeah.
those moments, those moments of realization, you're like, oh my God, all this stuff that I worry about in life is just irrelevant.
Yeah. God, that,
you know, but dude, those moments, that's what life is about. And we're so lucky to have our daughters, you know, and have that, oh my God, that love, which is just like nothing else and can bring up these emotions without even knowing it, right? And that is the greatest gift in the world. And like the sense of perspective, and also for me, as I'm sure with you, that sense of purpose. You know, suddenly you've got this extra bit of purpose in life because you're like, oh my God, I'm doing this for you. Like, this is why I'm here and I want to make you proud. And that's, you know, I'm sure why you do a lot of these challenges, because you want to showcase to your daughter, you know, anything is possible. Like, these are things that people have looked at and be like, no way, no one can do that. And you want her to know that anything is possible and like you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just, it's trying to communicate. I guess it's trying to communicate a message, but it's also trying to change the narrative. She is going to one day be aware of maybe the interviews and, you know, the conversations or maybe the press around her father and the struggles that he's had throughout his life with his mental health. And I think that's what I struggle with, because I would never want, in my head, and I know when someone hears me saying this, they're going to go, "You're not weak," but that's a natural reaction, is that when you put yourself out there and you feel vulnerable, you feel weak. And that's not the perception I would want my daughter to have of me. Now, by no means does anyone need to go to the levels I go to, but the point I'm trying to make here is that these challenges for me are an opportunity to express the outcome of that vulnerability, which is, "Bub, I struggle, but look what it's inspired me to do. I'm not allowing that to dictate who I am or how I live my life. I'm choosing the outcome, whatever that might be." And I hope that she can take real strength from that. And I think that's ultimately what this is about, is that there is so much strength from vulnerability. 100%. And you're right, it's still something that probably more people than not still feel uncomfortable doing. And I guess, you know, that in itself, when we go back to things like social media, maybe this is just my perception, but it feels like vulnerability and emotion is almost lost in translation on that platform. You know, everything seems to be so heavily focused on the humor and the entertainment, and it's great. But equally, when you do try and communicate that message, sometimes it can just feel like a bit of a weight. It's quite intense or maybe hyper emotional. And equally, I wouldn't want that to be the case. And that's why I think with everything that I do, you know, I've said this before, life is about peaks and troughs, but when you're in that trough, it's about showcasing the journey, how you're going to get back to that peak.
But do you find by then sharing that, does it create a bit more pressure, or do you suddenly feel like, you know, it's opened up to a whole, do you know what I mean? Does it intensify it at all? Or do you feel it's a huge weight off your shoulders and you feel a bit more relief? And the fact that you're able to share it and for people connect and communicate with you, it helps you in that journey? Or does it make it sometimes a bit harder?
It's a great question. And I'll be really honest with you. Right now, I would say I feel like a bit of an alien, because social media right now is a place where it's about success, right? And it's about accomplishment and personal bests. Very, very rarely are we actually seeing, I would say maybe from a male demographic, that side. And so, you know, for a lot of males, they'll look at you and they'll go, wow, look at these big challenges you've been fulfilling. But then when you start to express the emotional side, that to some, that almost could maybe devalue that a little bit, where if they're not necessarily comfortable with that topic of conversation, you know, it's a hard one. If you're not in that intimate setting like we're in right now, where we can sit and we can have that conversation, it can be difficult if they really just go off maybe a short clip on socials, for instance. And so, I don't know, there are times when I'll be honest with you, if I go into the gym or if I walk the streets, I feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I think to myself, you know, has this person seen what I've said, and what's their interpretation of that? And so that's why I think it's really important for me to express to people that it's really challenging sometimes to get yourself out of those tough spots. But what you cannot do, and I know this is easier said than done, because this year for me, like I touched on earlier, like I have not been proactive on socials at all, because I just have genuinely found myself in this really challenging cycle, which I know I'm going to get myself out of, is that's when I think people start to maybe detach themselves from you. Because what they need to see is, I guess, the willingness to fight it, right? And what that outcome looks like. If you are just remaining in that tough spot, there's only so much I think a person can support or necessarily relate to that before that maybe becomes a little bit too intense for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so when the narrative is, listen, this is a part of who I am, which is sometimes I'm going to be down here, but for the vast majority of time, I'm just grafting every day to make sure that I'm up here, because you want to be that pillar of strength. Yeah. But at the same time, I think, isn't that a powerful thing to showcase that, you know, on one hand, you can achieve something physically that no person on earth has ever done before, but equally you can find yourself incredibly vulnerable. So,
dude, we're all human. And I think that is, you know, I think a lot of people on social media only show the highs. Everyone has the lows, and some people have lows that are more intense than other people. But you're right. I think a lot of people feel like it's, and it's still the case, where it's a weakness to share those lows and like those vulnerabilities. But with people like yourself sharing those things, it normalizes it. And there are so many people going through what you're going through. So the fact that you're doing it is firstly incredible and extremely brave. But I think it's empowering, and hopefully it's empowering for you, and hopefully it's empowering for other people and helps them get through that journey. But yeah, I think it's so brave, dude, because I think, you know, by doing it, you are, as you said, you're opening up to so many people. And like you said, when you're walking along the street, you see someone, you know, someone who you don't even know, you're thinking to yourself, do they know what I'm going through? Are they like, you know, all these things that might go through your mind.
Do you know what? I think there's two things that I'm grateful for. Is you know, naturally, if a stranger reaches out to you and they go, you know, what you're doing is really helping me. But when a friend reaches out who I know has a history of a lack of emotion, right? Very introverted on that side of things. And what you've done has empowered them to speak up.
Yeah, that's mega.
And to connect on that level, that, like I said, that just bonds you in that relationship so much more. Like, I'm so grateful that I'm the person that they feel they can turn to. But equally, it's an amazing thing to know that they've been able to take that huge weight off their shoulders, which they may have been carrying for a very, very long time. And I really hope that in turn, that person, by doing that, can then connect with someone. Because what we're trying to do here is not about us, it's about creating that ripple effect. And that's a really powerful thing. That's it. That's what we need to keep doing. Yeah. Because whatever, you know, it's not just work that we're trying to achieve within the UK, it's global.
Of course.
We want to have, and the narrative naturally will be very different. How we communicate to someone here might not necessarily be the same communication in order to achieve the outcome in America. But creating that domino effect is there's going to be someone inspired by your work there
and then
that then can communicate
others,
that message.
100%.
Whatever that might be, whether that's business, whether that's family, whether that's running, whether that's love, whatever that might be. So I think that's where the focus, I think, is predominantly going to be focused on, is just creating that environment where we can keep this narrative going, you know. And for me,
you've got to use that as something to empower you. Do you know what I mean? The fact that that stuff is happening should give you strength and help you through it.
One of the things I've loved the most about 2024 is this podcast. You know, if I have struggled, sometimes it's nice not to deflect, but just, I don't want necessarily the focus to be on myself. I've always loved highlighting another's journey and the lessons that they've learned. They equally can inspire people in a different way. And it's so exciting for me that you've come into running now, Bud, because there's a whole new demographic that are going to be really inspired by you that, you know, maybe from a fashion point of view, they've never really even thought about the idea of running. And just by you sharing your truth or your experience within that could maybe inspire a few more.
That's it, man. And
more than the surface level.
100%. And even if it's just a few people. And I think, you know, it's about stepping out of your comfort zone. And that's the thing, you know, obviously I started training pretty early. And I think in January, I'm obviously going to get a little bit more into it. But I've loved the last few months of doing it. And I've been sharing a little bit of the journey. And I've been getting messages from people saying, do you know what, you've inspired me to get up and go for a run this morning. And then they'll message me later that day just going, I can't tell you how much better I feel from doing that run. And switching off and disconnecting, getting the endorphins going, no matter how long, if it's 2, 3K, whatever, a long run, whatever. And I think, yeah, I'm just excited now to kind of really get stuck into it. And at the end of the day, the most important thing on that day when we run the marathon, Elliot and I, is raising as much money as possible for the British Heart Foundation. You know, they raised 1.5 million last year, I think it was. So if we can raise as much money as possible to basically help them put everything into, you know, all the amazing work they're doing for heart conditions, circulatory disc conditions. You know, there's 7.6 million people in the UK with these conditions. And, you know, my dad lost his life in his 70s, but there are people losing their lives from heart conditions a lot younger than that.
I lost my uncle to it.
How old was he?
Way too young.
Yeah. So I lost my grandfather, my uncle, and my dad, all from heart attacks. But I've also lost friends. You know, I lost a friend not that long ago in his 30s, just went out one day for a run and had a heart attack while he was running. And he was super healthy, didn't drink, you know, and just had a heart condition that he was unsure of. He didn't know about. So yeah, that again, you know, throughout the training and through the day, and hopefully we raise as much money as we can. But aside from my dad giving me, you know, all that, you know, extra emotion and power and push from the day, everyone else and so many people, as you know, when they're running the marathon, are raising money for all these incredible causes. And it may be for the people that they've lost or whatever it is that they're doing on that day. It's an emotional day, right? It's an incredible day. So I'm just excited to kind of just get on that journey and just, aside from the time I get, you know, the time I want to get, but even if I don't get it, it doesn't matter, obviously. It's not what's important.
You might not have even thought about it, but when you cross that finish line, have you fantasized about what you're hoping to feel when you do that?
Yeah, I just want to feel a sense of, I'm trying to, it's funny when I think about it, I thought back to 10 years ago when I crossed that finish line. And obviously you get that sense of fulfillment. You have that overwhelming sense of emotion. And it's just like the energy from the day, everyone else there, everyone's on the same page. No one's judging anyone. It's just like one of those days that just feels so good. But I'm hoping at the end, you know, I just have that sense of fulfillment, and I know that my dad will be looking, oh, I'm going to get emotional now. Excuse me. Hello. Pride from my dad. I know he'll be very proud.
I'm proud of you, bro. I really am.
Beast.
I am.
Oh, hello. But yeah, I know I'm going to be very emotional on the day. I know I'm going to be very, very emotional. But to get pass the finish line and have Bonnie run into my arms and give Ems a big hug, yeah, that's going to be pretty special, I think.
How lucky are we to have two people in our life that have had such a profound impact for us to feel that way?
Oh my God. But the amazing thing is they don't even know it. You know what I mean? They have no idea like how much they've changed our life. And that is incredible.
And that's why it just baffles me how anyone in this world can raise an individual or think to themselves that emotion is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
It is such a beautiful thing. I mean, for you to react there about your dad in that way, I just think it's testament to his character, the way that he's raised you, the experiences that you've shared together. For my daughter to draw me a picture and for me to react like that, I just think...
I know, it's crazy.
It's a gift.
I think both of it, we're going to burst into tears right now.
It's a gift, man.
It
you
is.
know, and you know, the challenges I'm faced with my daughter is that she's not with me all the time. Of
course.
You know, we're in very different circumstances. You know, it's
No,
split
I
between
know
her
that
mother
must
and
be
I.
hard.
But it's not now. Because I look at life and I go, wow, am I not lucky that I get to even spend 50% of the time with my daughter and really value each and every second that I have with her? There are certain
100%.
people in this world that will never even experience that.
I know.
You know, and I've said this 1,000 times. I've achieved more since the day my daughter was born than any year prior to that. And for that, I'm so incredibly grateful. And that's what gives me hope. That's what makes me excited about the future, because I just think, what's next? You know, and when the day comes where hopefully she's of age where we can, I can't wait to start sharing those experiences together, where she's not going to be on the sideline. It's going to get to the point where she's holding my hand and pulling me along with her, you know?
But, you know, that's it, man. And that's what it's about. And no matter what you're going through life, and I know you're going through a bit of a time at the moment, but that little moment there with India when she gave you that card and the feelings you felt from that, then you're like, oh my God, everything is good. Everything is sweet. And those are the things that will get you through, and all of us around you, like everything will be all good.
100%.
And it's like, yeah, it's fucking crazy, huh? Wow. Jeez, oh man.
Good luck with the rest of the day, big man.
I'm excited, bro. Can't wait to get out there with these crunchy hips.
Oh man, honestly, I mean...
But it's funny, my body's not where it is 10 years ago at all.
But you know, you just got to work with what you've got, and there are people of all ages doing this.
That's the thing with the marathon. The day, I know I'm going to just love the day.
You're going to fulfill it.
I'm not worried about that.
And whether I'm running it or whether I'm on the sideline cheering, you know, the preparation really started a while ago, and irrelevant actually in terms of how the preparation goes.
Yeah.
You are going to fulfill that marathon, and it's going to be so unbelievably special.
No,
and
I can't wait.
you know, a lot of people who have listened to this episode now, if you find yourself down at London Marathon next year, just cheer this guy on, because
just give me a yeah, baby. Just shout me a yeah, baby. That's
and even if
I
it's
need.
raining.
Oh, sun is shining. If you hit me one of those, then that is what's going to just make me go speed. Pacey Prude is coming in hot.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys
excited.
and girls, and to anyone listening, you know, a massive round of applause and just a huge thanks and a massive, big love to my brother and to my friend and to the man I'm proudest of, Proudlock.
Love you, Beast. Thank you for having me, mate. Emotional. And then we were being like, yeah, we're not going to go serious. We're just going to keep it light.
Wow. Wow. Just flying in.